And titanium is like a whole 45% lighter than steel. And so you can just take your watch and... One of the most basic but difficult questions that we watch enthusiasts struggle with is how to tell an expensive watch from a cheaper one. It may not be so easy because even if you take brand name out of it, it can be hard to tell just from pictures or a YouTube video, because under soft studio lighting with some heavy photo editing, you can make a very ordinary watch look like $1,000,000. So in this video, we're going to use the new titanium Certina DS action diver to make this point. I'm going to tell you 3 things that makes this watch really stand out at about $1,000, but 1 or 2 things that may make you reconsider. Hey guys, I'm Max and this is Watch Crunch. Are you tired of the flex culture on IG? Are you looking for a place to have real watch discussions? Well, check out the new Watch Crunch app and join thousands of fellow watch nerds on a new and better platform for talking watches. Warren Buffett once said, "Price is what you pay, value is what you get." Something that we all consider when we're shopping for a watch, but it's not so simple when it comes to luxury goods because much of that value is perceived. See, the Certina name isn't as renowned as an Omega or even Hamilton, all of whom belong under the Swatch Group umbrella. But Certina is no slouch, having been founded 130 years ago. And the benefit from buying from the bottom of that Swatch pyramid is that you can get microbrand pricing for a century-old name. History might not matter to you, but there is something to be said about surviving the quartz crisis when 2 out of 3 of your peers vanished. But let's talk materials first. One feature that separates more expensive watches may be the use of precious metals, such as gold, platinum, silver, or in this case, titanium. Titanium is a perfect material for dive watches. Dive watches tend to be bigger, but titanium is about half the weight of steel and more corrosion resistant. There are 2 typical grades of titanium that a watch case can be made from. Manufacturers will boast if they use titanium grade 5, but if they don't advertise it, like in this case, we can assume it's grade 2. But still, it's kind of a surprise to get a full titanium watch on the bracelet for this little money. For example, the Tudor Pelagos 39, often celebrated for its friendly price, costs 4 times as much, and it's still grade 2. But is titanium even necessary? Or is it just like a vanity thing here? After all, we're not building rockets or race cars, but it is reassuring that this Certina diver is actually ISO certified for 300 meters water resistance. I also love the darker tones of titanium, which plays well with the muted color scheme of this watch. But a couple things to be aware of here. Titanium being so light can sometimes feel cheap in the hand. We kind of subconsciously associate weight with quality. And the first time you pick up a titanium watch, it can feel a little bit like a toy. Next, the Certina's case is pretty basic. It's all brushed and lacks some of those chamfers and complex shapes and transitions that we associate with more expensively finished watches. Guys, do me a quick favor, drop a like for this video before we get deeper into this analysis, and subscribe if you want to stick around, hang out some more. One thing that is undeniable is how handsome this little watch is. Certina has many variants of the DS Action Diver, but for my wrist at 38 millimeters, this hits on a magic number. It's more stout than like a 36 millimeter Explorer, but less sort of ungainly than a modern 41 millimeter sub. The dial is a deep gray with well-proportioned elements. Now, more expensive watches will often feature higher dial finishing, whether that's like a sunburst pattern, a guilloche on more dressier pieces, or complex finishes like what Grand Seiko does, but this is just kind of flat gray. And we have to talk about the color of this lume. I think someone on the design team stayed late, maybe smoked a joint, and played with Photoshop a little too long. The lume has this blue tint, almost looks like the color of Rolex Chromolite when it's in the dark. So I'm gonna call this Certina Permalite. it's an acquired taste for sure. The combination of an arrow-tipped hour hand with the lollipop second hand though is very aquatically themed. When you look with a macro lens, you can see the finishing of the hands. They're pretty basic here, and maybe my favorite part of this watch is the brown, almost tropical looking aluminum bezel to finish off that vintage inspired look. But just be aware that more expensive watches often will use like ceramic bezels. This watch is a spec king on paper at $1,000. Powering it is the Powermatic 80 movement from Swatch, a modified ETA with its beat rate slowed down and its power reserve dialed up to 80. Now, I railed against this movement in my PRX video, but keep in mind not all Powermatic 80s are made the same. The .111 is the version you have to worry about. That one has a plastic escapement. This .611 has a normal escapement, as do the Hamilton H series movements. They all get a pass in my book. In fact, the Certina even has a Neva Chrome hairspring for anti-magnetism. So then it's perfect, right? Great specs, including a sapphire crystal, a full titanium case and bracelet, a solid movement at an undeniable price. So what's the catch? There's always a catch. And in this case, some telltale signs that lets on that this watch is not of Omega quality, for example. We mentioned a few, but one place that you have to always look for cost cutting is the bracelet, because at the lower price end, manufacturers often have to focus their resources on the watch head and they have little budget left to build a great bracelet. For example, the clasp here is stamped metal instead of milled, and the links are held together by push pins rather than screws. Now, they did put a diver's extension to remind us that this is a tool watch, but that only leaves 2 micro adjustment holes. Next, look at the crown. It's steel and it's polished, and that's a bit of an eyesore when contrasted between these brushed titanium crown guards. Now, if that was all, I say this is still a buy for a Swiss titanium watch for under $1,000. But there's one last issue that keeps me from giving this watch my full endorsement, at least for the slim-wristed amongst us. See, the biggest Achilles heel for the DS Action Diver is not the watch, but the end links. They made a watch that's 38 millimeters in size, only to give it male end links that extends the true length of the watch to 51 millimeters. The links do curve down a bit, so if I get it perfectly centered on my 6.5-inch wrist, I can just pull it off, but it kind of feels like a self-inflicted wound here. So far we've only talked about visual things, but we also use our other senses to judge a watch. You guys know now that I'm a physician, so I'm going to use a medical analogy here. When they teach us in medical school to examine for liver disease, you can look for jaundice or engorged veins, but you can also feel the abdomen. You can feel for the edge of the liver. You can feel how hard the texture is. You can tap on the belly, listen to the quality of the sound. The liver failure patients, they even give off a specific odor that you can smell. So I would venture that the best way to judge a watch's quality is actually not visual, but tactile. When you take a watch out of its box, interact with its touch points. For example, the way the clasp snaps together, is it consistent and positive, or does it feel sort of rough, unsatisfying? Now, run your fingers over the watch. Things that are supposed to be sharp should be crisp. Other transitions of different sections, they should feel smooth. Now put it on your wrist, shake it around. Does it rattle or wobble? Does it move like a single unit? Feel the action of the bezel as you rotate it. How much force is needed to turn it? Does it click like music to your ears, or does it sound rough and grating? These are all pieces of information that your eyes can't gather, and it tells you about the microscopic tolerances between the little metal parts and the quality of those surfaces as they rub up against each other. Just don't smell your watch. That's weird. But guys, let me know what other tricks you have up your sleeve to judge a watch's quality. Hit me up on the Watch Crunch app for a more extended discussion. Stay sexy. I'll see you in the next one.